Ladies and gents, welcome back. We've got breaking news that's hitting the headlines this morning about lower inflation rates. Now, is this real? Is this reality? Or is this just kind of an illusion that they're hoping to bring to people to make them feel better about the economy here in Canada? Let's get into this. Financial Post is saying inflation slows to 3.4% in May. Inflation cooled significantly on lower gas prices. Well, what do the lower gas prices look like in your neighborhood? Because they're not looking very much lower on my end of this, the end of the street. Here in British Columbia, gas prices are insane still, as we are still paying huge prices for gasoline. Inflation growth slowed in May. Inflation growth slowed in May after a brief April acceleration due to gasoline prices and base year effects. Let's get past all these ads here. The Consumer Price Index rose 3.4% in May over year as prices at the pump dropped 18.3%. Statistics said on June 27th, including gasoline prices. The CPI increased 4.4% following a 4.9% increase in April. So there is some marginal gas price decreases in some areas in Canada, I'm assuming. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is where the politics come in and how they politicize the economy. Now, the CPI, what is that? What is that number? I've talked about this before on the channel, and the CPI is called the Consumer Price Index, and it's based on a basket of goods. And the basket of goods is a number of different items that are out there in the economy. And a lot of times what the government does is, well, when the inflation numbers look pretty bad, they change what's in the basket. They change the goods that are in the basket, and then that usually reflects a different number. There have been economists that have said that basically if we were to use the same basket of goods that they used back in the 1970s or in the 1980s and put that in the basket of goods today, inflation rates would be up towards 13%, not 4 point whatever they're saying it is today, 3.4%. But this is this. On a monthly basis, the CPI rose 0.4% in May following a 0.7% gain in April. The largest contributors in the month-over-month increase were mortgage interest costs. Hey, why are those things going up? And travel services, which include traveler accommodation and travel tours, the agency said in its report. Now, it's really interesting that that's some of the big concern here, because we've been talking about this again on the channel. Now people are celebrating on Twitter. CPI inflation dropped to 3.4% in May and is back down to summer 2021 levels. So will the Bank of Canada raise interest rates just because next month? Well, you know what? Yeah, they will. They probably will. And that's my guesstimate on this whole thing. Here's an article from Better Dwelling. Canadian real estate is once again inflationary, reinforces need for hikes. Wow, the prices are going up regardless of, well, the interest rates also going up at the Bank of Canada. Canadian real estate prices are rising, and that's bad news if you're looking for cheap credit. Statistics Canada reported in new home pricing made the first increase in nearly a year. Hey, the cost of living is going up once again. Everybody celebrate, because now that's the time. I don't know, maybe some people, this is a signal to get out of the housing market. This might be your last ditch effort to maybe make some gains or recoup costs before prices go down again. In a research note to investors, BMO, the bank, warned of the increase is just one of many housing data points that shows shelter is back to driving inflation. That helps to justify the recent central bank rate hike and potentially open the door to further hikes. Yes, Canadian new home prices return to growth. Now, again, that might be a signal for people to get out of the market, because here we are, article from BNN Bloomberg, government shunting dirty work on inflation to Bank of Canada. CIBC says the Bank of Canada will help to keep rates higher for longer unless governments do more to dial back their spending. One of the country's largest commercial lenders warned. This is the issue here in Canada. The governments are spending all of our money, and what people need to realize is the effects of inflation are what we're actually measuring here. When we're measuring the CPI and we're measuring rising prices, these are actually just the effects of inflation. What inflation is a monetary phenomena. It's the actual increase of the money supply when there's more money out there, i.e. governments borrowing money they don't have and issuing new currency, i.e. money printer go brr. This is what inflation is. What we're doing we got the cart before the horse here all the time, is we're measuring the effects of inflation by measuring rising prices. The idea here from the Bank of Canada to raise interest rates, it actually encourages people to save and not borrow as much, and not not get into the concept of borrowing more money. And also the government is also trying to stave off the government from borrowing more money. But no, the government in Canada is not borrowing less money, despite the interest rates going up and us having to service those debts with higher interest rates. Economists at the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce says that policymakers led by Governor Tiff McClellan have been left to do the dirty work of stalling the economy in order to bring inflation back to 2%, the 2% target. And while they acknowledge that the lower federal fiscal spending has started to drag on growth. As generous COVID-19 programs expire, they argue that cutting back further on state largesse would help cool demand. But we saw in the recent budget, the 2023 budget, they added $6 billion, billion with a B, 600 billion to the spending, which, where are they coming up with that money? Well, we don't know. We have no idea. They're just going to print more money. And this is the case that we're in now. Pierre Poilievre, obviously constantly on his, saying it. He's been saying this for years and years and years. We need to curb money. We got to curb spending so much money. And we got to, if we want to relieve Canadians of all of this inflation, the quickest way to do this is to, get rid of some of the taxes that we've put on Canadians that are so burdensome, especially with all these carbon taxes. Canadians cannot afford to pay any more, and that's why Common Sense plan is to axe the tax and bring home lower prices for Atlantic Canadians and for all Canadians. Hey, I'm a Pacific Canadian. I'd like to have lower prices, says Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, as he reiterates criticism of federal carbon price increases. And here he is talking about that.
Canadians are getting no perks from this government. In fact, after 8 years of Justin Trudeau, life costs more, work doesn't pay, housing costs have doubled, crime, chaos, drugs and disorder are common in our streets, and he divides to distract. Now 1 in 5 Canadians are skipping meals, and 1.5 million going to food banks every single month, because food prices under Trudeau have increased so dramatically. 9 in 10 of our young people believe they'll never be able to afford a home after the price of a house has doubled across this country. Now our housing prices are almost 100% higher than they are in the United States of America. But Trudeau's plan is to make it worse. He's increasing taxes on gas, diesel, and groceries starting on July 1st for Atlantic Canadians. Thank you. Thank you. We're holding a bit of a rally here. So these are all the hardworking people who are paying too much for gas already and don't want to pay Justin Trudeau's 61-cent a litre carbon tax. It'll start with approximately 14 cents a litre this summer, but over the years to come, Trudeau wants to jack it up 300% to 61 cents a litre. And wait till the winter comes. The new carbon tax, which takes effect this summer, will still be in place in the winter, making it hard for Atlantic Canadians, many of whom heat using oil to warm their homes. Seniors will be forced to choose between heating and eating. And speaking of eating, when Trudeau taxes the energy of the farmer who makes the food and the trucker who ships the food, he taxes the people who buy the food. Enough. Canadians cannot afford to pay any more. And that's why my common sense plan is to axe the tax to bring home lower prices for Atlantic Canadians and for all Canadians.
Well, that would be the smart thing to do, in my opinion. Get rid of carbon taxes or any other increases to the price of fuels or anything. I know I would like to say, like, so for example, when with GST, for example, when GST is applied and some of these vendors have to pay GST, they end up getting a rebate on the GST that they've paid. So it's not passed on to the consumer. It doesn't get added on to the price of things. It's only the consumer at the end that pays the GST ultimately. Now, when it comes to a carbon tax, this is a snowballing type thing where every time somebody makes a purchase, they're passing off that initial carbon tax. And if there's more fuel, anytime that energy goes into any sort of product, it just gets snowballed and added to the whole price of everything, from farmers producing the carbon tax that they have to pay for their fertilizers and fuels. That gets passed on to the consumer. You think they're going to absorb that? No, you have to pay that in higher prices of foods. When that food gets shipped to you, again, that's more. So this is all inflationary. In the effects that it is causing prices to go up. But the real inflationary issue is the government spending more money than we actually even have to spend on frivolous things, as we've seen in the past few years. We're not spending money on worthwhile projects like infrastructure and things like that. No, everything is just going into frivolous spending throughout the world, not even just in Canada and in our economy, but it's getting thrown out everywhere. And that's where the real inflation is. So when we see numbers like this new low in inflation, we can surely look at it and say, all right, well, this is just a good indication that they're flubbing the numbers. Anyway, leave a comment in the comment section down below. Tell me that I'm completely wrong on this, or tell me how you've been dealing with inflation, and have you been cutting costs on food, fuel, other things? Leave a comment in the comment section down below and let me know what you think about that. And we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.